Richard, you are here today in Aerials, and the election gonna be held 5th of May. What message would you give?
Well, I think it's a really important election for two reasons, one locally and one nationally. Locally, local people in Gipton Hales ward have got a chance to re-elect Salma Arif, who is from the ward, lives in the ward, is a fantastic, hard-working local councillor who really cares about the community. And nationally, people have got the chance to send a message to Boris Johnson's government. They've had enough of people in our country being treated with disrespect and contempt by this out-of-touch government. So for those reasons, locally and nationally, I urge everyone to vote for the Labour Party candidate, Councillor Salma Arif, here in Gipton Hales on Thursday the 5th of May.
All right. So, what would you say about current crisis in all over the UK we are facing?
Well, people are facing a real cost of living crisis. People having to choose between heating and eating. People are struggling, and we need a government that's on people's side, and we don't have that at the moment. And that's why the Labour Party is arguing for a windfall tax. That's why the Labour Party is arguing for action to help people through this cost of living crisis. And that's in stark contrast with Boris Johnson's Conservative government.
All right. So, in Aerials, many Kashmiri people are supporting you, and what is your policy about Kashmir? Your leader said Kashmir is India's internal issue, but in fact, Kashmir is an international issue, and there are many resolutions in the UNO, and both side of Kashmir, Pakistani side Kashmir, Indian side Kashmir, and those who are in abroad, they want a referendum. But your leader said that is India internal issue. So, what is your policy about Kashmir?
Well, my position has always been clear on this, and I've spoken in Parliament and outside Parliament on this. The Kashmiri people are due self-determination. It's long overdue. The United Nations resolution needs to be implemented, and we need to see an end of the human rights abuses visited upon the people of Kashmir by the government of India. So I support the policy of a plebiscite so the people of Kashmir can choose their own destiny, choose their own future. It's been promised since 1948 by the United Nations, and it should be delivered upon now. And people have seen the way that in India occupied Kashmir, human rights abuses are taking place, and it should concern all of us all around the world, and it does. And I think that our country has a special duty to assist the people of Kashmir to gaining their self-determination because of the role that we've historically played as a country in that area of the world. And so people in East Leeds who are of Kashmiri descent or Kashmiri origin quite rightly feel very passionately about this, passionate about the importance of self-determination for the people of Kashmir, but also passionate that the human rights abuses visited upon people by the Modi government need to end. So it's really important that as an international community we speak out about this, assert the importance of self-determination and insert the importance of human rights as well.
All right. So, what would you say about next general election? We are going through a big crisis. Uh, the Ukraine crisis is there, and the financial crisis is there. So, if people trust you and they bring you in a government, how will you cope with that?
Well, the cost of living crisis is the biggest cost of living crisis people in this country have faced in living memory. At the same time, the very richest have done very well. British billionaires have increased their wealth to the tune of £270 million per day during this crisis. And so we need a government that's on the side of the 99%, a government that's on the side of the working class in all its diversity, a government that's on the side of people who live in East Leeds and Gipton Hales and across the country. And that means, for example, a £15 an hour minimum wage. That means banning 0 hours contracts. That means ending fire and rehire. That means building 100,000 council houses a year. That means a government that's going to properly support and fund our National Health Service. That means a government that's not going to hike taxes on working people, but will instead make the very rich in our society pay their fair share. So the next general election, will be a clear choice. The Conservatives have made things worse for ordinary people, and I think that Boris Johnson and his team of Conservative MPs in Parliament and government have treated people with utter contempt during the COVID crisis, before it, and at the moment as well. So it really is time for a change.
All right. So there are some people in Britain who thinks the foreigner are taking their jobs and they are struggling because of foreigner. I have experienced myself. What would you say about foreigner?
Well, I think it's very important that we're clear that the cost of living crisis isn't because of migrants, it's not because of immigrants, it's not because of refugees, and we need to ensure that we don't allow the right-wing politicians or the right-wing media to scapegoat people and try and have people blaming their neighbours. At the end of the day, the working class majority in our society is diverse, and you see that in Gipton Hareholds and you see that in East Leeds. So we need to make sure that those who are really responsible for the cost of living crisis, the government and bad bosses, that they're held to account, that they take responsibility for the cost of living crisis and for the decisions they've made on wages, on housing, on benefits, on pensions, on a whole host of issues, and that we don't allow migrants and refugees fleeing war and persecution, to unfairly take the blame. They're not responsible for the cost of living crisis.
Okay. So in a Leeds city, there are many taxi drivers are protesting, and they are saying Labour is not supporting them, and the taxi driver facing difficulties in Leeds. So are you supporting them, or what do you think about new laws?
Well, I've met with the taxi drivers in my constituency to listen to them and to discuss their concerns, and they've expressed their concerns about the policy of Leeds City Council, and I want to see the taxi drivers listened to. I want to see this resolved. Obviously, I very much welcome the fact that there have been some changes. Taxi drivers have told me that they welcome the fact that no longer will their vehicles be deemed unroadworthy for minor cosmetic scratches which don't affect the safety of the vehicle. I think it's really important that taxi drivers are listened to, and that the council works with taxi drivers and resolves this issue. The reason being that they play an important role in our society. But of course, during COVID, taxi drivers' wages have been our taxi drivers' income has been hit really hard. They suffered disproportionately during the COVID crisis because the reduction in the number of people using taxis. So it's really important that we support taxi drivers, and that's why I met with them very early on during this situation, or to listen to them and listen to their concerns. And I know that their trade unions, the GMB and other trade unions, the organisations of taxi drivers in Leeds, working hard to represent them and working hard to make their voices heard and explain their concerns. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure.